All right, Mr. Sneaky, welcome to our channel again. It's great to have you again. Our first collaboration, I think it was a great video. It was very insightful. You shared a lot of tips and tricks. And this time, I personally need your help. And what I'm going to do is basically also give our viewers a bit of a background. I'm going to soon, in December, I guess, I will share the projects and everything on the channel, but I'm going to start a new account. And this time I plan to spend quite a bit. And so what I wanted to do, what I asked from Mr. Sneaky is I want him to basically guide me because he has a lot of experience when it comes to Call of Dragons. So I don't want to waste any investments, anything on my account. I want it to be quote unquote a perfect account for my budget. So I asked Mr. Sneaky, can you make a video? Can we make a video about it? And then you can answer my questions. And I think those questions, like a lot of people could have those questions. So welcome, Mr. Sneaky.
How you doing, dude? Thank you for having me. And it was very fun last time. It was very fun, so I'm happy to help you again.
Yeah, thank you so much. Without further ado, I'm gonna start with the first question, right? So when we start Call of Dragons, usually, like, I believe if someone cares about the game, to watch YouTube videos, I think they don't just going to, create an account in a random server. So they're going to go to Discord, maybe look for projects. That's actually my first question, because if you fail in that department, you will fail like from the get-go. How do you know if a project will succeed? Like, what do you look at when it comes to Call of Dragons projects?
Very good question. It's kind of hard at first to assume any project is going to do very well, right? But what you could also do is a nice background check, right? Because obviously they're going to try and vet you for the project, see if you're, what they need. But you could do the same thing to them, right? So you could, ask them, what's your prior experience? What games have you played? What alliances have you run there? At least you're getting some feedback, back from them as a leadership team. And that might actually give you some answers to, this might be a project I believe in. Maybe it's not a project I believe in, which is, I think, a really good thing that people don't really do much when it comes to projects.
I see. So the main thing is the experience of the leaders, I guess, huh?
Yes, definitely, because you've got to think the more experienced the leader is, and you can see this even in a project, how it's structured, the way the application system is, it's all like data-based and roles and all this. Like, you can see if there's a clear structure to it. They've got some really good management skills, so they've got some good experience already behind them.
I see. That's great. Now, we're going to go back to in-game stuff. And the first question about in-game is because it's all about, investing your tokens to right commanders. In Call of Dragons, is it better to, like, spread your investments between multiple unit types or just focus on one specific unit type? Let's say, for example, just to give a little bit of a context to our viewers, let's say on one side, we have Lilia and Velen, Emrys and Bakshi, I don't know, Garwood and Madeline, for example. And the other side, we have Nico and Kinnara, Freygar and Sindrian, like full archer, let's say full archer. So which one you think have the edge?
So it does depend on, obviously, your budget or your, aim as a player. So if you are just trying to play, I would say, like, free to play, I would just try and stay with just one troop type. It makes your goal easier, not even just with your hero investment, even when it comes to like your research tech. It makes it a lot easier only in having to research into one of the 4 branches just to specialize into
that's
it.
right. Yeah.
So it's really good to do that. But if you're, maybe a bit more of a spender, you've got more of a budget compared to the free-to-play player, which is viable for more players, I actually would suggest into more like leaning into 2 types of troops to run. And it's really good because if you do that, you kind of give you more flexibility as well as your alliance flexibility too, which I think is a really important aspect that people don't look at. Because you could be, someone that invests and you might get the mage, so you might pay and get Lilia, and then you're gonna get Valen, and over time, obviously, you're gonna be stuck on some mage heroes. So one thing I always suggested is always going for a second type, and it sounds a bit crazy, but one thing that mages obviously lack, as you will be fully aware of, is in the raids. They're not obviously the greatest DPS, threat for the raid. So what you could do is actually invest into something like Madeline and Garwood, because Madeline and Garwood, surprisingly, for season 1 and season 2, has been now an all-star because of the fact that we need infantry to tank. They need to be able to tank damage in PvP to actually allow damage through. So it's really good because now you've got the mages already that deal the damage, and now you've got for raiding an infantry comp, and in PvP, now you can even support your front line, right? So I think having 2 types of troops is really good because it gives you that flexibility. And obviously, I'm only mentioning mages there, but it kind of goes with anything. So, you know, you could be an archer player with cavalry or infantry. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, you could mix it up. You could just pick one or the other in, like, your pairings. And then as long as you pick your 2 troop types and stick to it, it's going to make your job, again, a lot easier when it comes to research and all of that back end.
I see. So what if you are a spender, like not a whale, like not a huge spender, like a mid spender, and you want to focus just for fun? You want to focus one troop type, one unit type only. Which one would that be?
At the moment, I would definitely probably pick the archers, just because with the archers, if you are definitely becoming like a mid spender, you might skip Lilia and you might buy Hosk, right?
Oh,
and if you get
that was actually Hosk, one of my questions, like about Hosk, because I was kind of expecting for you to say archers, and I was going to next question. I was going to ask about Hosk, but please go ahead.
Yeah, so if you're a bit more of a mid spender, you might skip the actual bundles for Lilia, because you might be like, do you know what? I'm not gonna be playing mages, and I want to play archers. So you skip those bundles and save that money investment to put it into Hosk instead. And it means what you could be running is by season 2, you're going to have Syndron, Kinnara, Freyga, Nico unlocked, and now Hosk. So you could run the absolute monstrous comps of Syndron, Freyga, and Kinnara and Hosk, which is very deadly in PvP. So you can do stuff like that. And, you know, you do have Nico still open, and you could do stuff if you really wanted to, like Nico and Craig, just, you know, maybe slap on like a Heart of Kamisei, just so your first 2 matches we just mentioned have more normal attack damage, for example, like you get boosted even higher, and just play it like that. So you've got a triple match set up there already that you can be just powering out. So at the moment, I think archers are in the best suit. Obviously, because we don't know what the season 3 mage heroes, I'm guessing, are going to look like.
Let me ask you a random question now then. How do you feel about, let's say, we are using, first, this is my first question, Hosk primary and Kinnara secondary, or Kinnara primary, Hosk secondary?
It is a little bit strange because I think both have actually a really good argument for both of them. So the Kinnara argument for the primary one is pretty simple. You just get access to better trees. So you're going to get
marksman
access
and control, PvP.
Yeah, it's just insane. It's just insane, dude. So you're going to get access to those 3 really powerful trees. So your march is going to get overpowered. Plus, obviously, with the deputy slot now, you're going to gain that 40% normal attack damage bonus, right? So you are going on the offensive, but if you actually change it and put Hosk in the primary and run sounds a bit crazy, but you can either do a full precision tree, but I lean into a overall and precision tree, because I actually like stuff like emergency triage, where it reduces the amount of 7 wounds that your units take in PvP. And the fact that now he's the primary, you're getting a 25% defensive bonus. Basically means that Hosk and Kinnara is going more of a tanky route, and because you're going more of a tanky route, it allows you to technically try and sustain, you know, less damage in the battlefield by reducing the power of that overall tree. So that's the way I look at it. I think you can run both on either or, you know, and have Hosk primary and hide the Kinnara in the back really well, because people might not just want to hit the Hosk, right? Or you can run the Kinnara primary and have a better talent tree of like just flexibility of choices, basically.
I see. So I have a hard question for you. I'm not 100% sure, but I think Hosk does cost around like $350 or something around that. How much money I should be spending to justify awakening Hosk? Like,
Yeah, it's a
let's say
hard one.
if my total budget is $500, let's say, I don't think it's worth awakening Hosk, right? But maybe if my budget is 2K, and then Hosk might be worth it.
Yeah, definitely. I think if you've got like a budget of like 500, say like dollars, you could
Uh-huh.
definitely be spending your money better
Yeah.
than the Hosk. Because the thing with Hosk is one thing like I've found out, and a lot of my viewers are slowly coming to the agreement too, is even a 5 or 1-1-1 Hosk honestly just realistically doesn't cut it in the open field, right?
Mm-hmm.
It just sadly doesn't. So you really want either to just unlock him just to get the extra legendary bundle that pops up
Oh, I see. I
for
see.
for that.
10
You could
tokens.
do it, yeah, for the 10 tokens. You can do something like that, and that'd be fine. Or you can just awaken him, and it's either one. You can't go in between with his hero, and that's the thing with him. I think it's an all-in champ.
Yeah.
So when you do have a bigger budget, maybe even like just $1,000, maybe
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
that would warrant it, because even with $1,000, to be honest, I'm not gonna lie, you could get so far in this like game straight away off the get go with the Hosk in your slot as well. So
Yeah. I see. So 1,000 plus, huh?
yeah, definitely.
Here's another question. I actually wanted to ask this before Hosk, but it's about unit type. So in Rise of Kingdoms, I know you know Rise of Kingdoms, right? You know the
Yes,
details
yeah,
and everything.
yes, yeah.
So in Rise of Kingdoms, it is pretty straightforward, right? We have 3 different troop types. I'm not counting sieges, of course. So archer counters infantry, infantry counters cavalry, and cavalry counters archers. But in Call of Dragons, we have an extra unit type, which is mages. And I think it makes things a little bit more complicated. So, and since you have a lot of field experience, how do you think those units and counters work?
Yeah, so it is a very strange one. The only kind of outlier I will admit that is in the unit advantage system at the moment, which I think the devs hopefully will address during this new season 2 plus, is the cavalry to infantry.
Mm-hmm.
At the moment, cavalry are in this spot where they are honestly a really good unit, and infantry should be the ones that keep them in the place, and they do with the rampage trigger. But when it actually just comes to you expect an infantry player to be a cavalry player in a 1v1, for example, they just realistically don't. They're like the cavalry player can just still overwhelm them, and then everything else is actually true. So like the cavalry do just kind of absolutely snap the back legs of any mage or archer player because of the unyielding rush. That whole ability is all centered about attacking ranged units.
Yeah.
So it's really good that cavalry do keep these two in check, because the mage units are really good at obviously splash damage and doing really good damage against infantry units, which is obviously what you need. And then the archers are surprising, because the archers can do some really good damage against infantry units too. But they also, as you know, they have the unit advantage against the mages. So they are kind of like the snipers in the whole murder ball, where if you kind of leave the marksman player unchecked, they will just kill all of your mage players one by one really quickly without you realizing, just because like they're there and they're like this little silent predator, and that's kind of what their role is. They kind of sneak in, get a couple of kills, and like sneak out so you don't even realize, and then they do it again, basically.
I see. So my question is, from what you said, I mean, what I understood is cavalry basically counters both mages and archers?
Yes, definitely, because when we go to, and anyone can do this, if you go to your cavalry building, so if you're a Wilderberg or the League of Order, you're going to have the Knight Rider or the Wolf Rider. If you're a Spring Warden player, you're going to have to look at the Eagle Nest, because when you click on your building to even train the unit, you can click on the little informational icon there. And a special trait, like I was saying, to melee-based cavalry units states that whenever they are going to attack a ranged unit or ranged legion, should we say, their march speed is increased when approaching that unit, and they get 1,000 rage immediately, and this effect can be triggered every 12 seconds. So the fact that they do kind of counter mage and archers is kind of what they're known for, and like kind of terrorize you in the backline for.
I see. Isn't it better to just... Because what I see from Call of Dragons players is that, I don't want to say like 95%, but at least 80% of players, they either go with mages and archers. So do you think it's a viable strategy to counter both, to just, as a spender, focus on pure cavalry?
So this is something that's been floating about. There is a player that's been doing that exact strategy right now, and I think it is possible because of the newer heroes, because we do get Forendil and
Theodore.
In order to do this, you do need to play Spring Wardens, though. I will warn you, because it is a very unique strategy in order to do this, because you can do, if you really wanted to, ground-based, like eagles, like that still works. If you had, for example, a Bakshi Emrys, you can still put the eagles with them, but all that happens is the eagles lose the ability to fly, because obviously the heroes don't have the flying trait. So you can still use them exactly like you would use a Wolf Rider and a Knight one. But the power where we've seen the best of the best, like cavalry players, I would say, use Spring Wardens, is actually using the ranged ones, because the ranged ones don't deal as much damage because of obviously the skill trigger. But what they're really, really powerful at doing is when you get 5 cavalry marchers on the battlefield and you all have the exact same movement speed. Because then you kind of, instead of playing Call of Dragons, which a lot of players do in the way we all kind of know how to play Call of Dragons, you kind of play more like a League of Legends game, because you're playing like an AD carry where you've got these 5 cavalry marches and you can be in and out of combat so fast, and you're out kiting the enemy. So you can, like, even if an infantry troop is trying to close you down, you can actually outrun them and just keep pulling them out of position. And when they try to run back, you start attacking back. So you always start winning in those trades by like this really unique play style.
Yeah, it's basically like kiting in League of Legends. I see.
Yeah, so that's why it's like a very unique play style. So you could do something like this. And obviously, now we've seen these commanders. Who knows, in the future, the next rotation, what the next cavalry commanders are going to be for you guys that kind of go down this specialized route.
I mean, I'm going to talk about for myself. I don't like those extremely specific playstyles. So I think archers will be, if I wanted to focus on one unit type, archers will be more ideal for me. Now my question is, if I pair, let's say I awakened Hosk, and I pair Hosk with Kinnara, and then I have Sindrian and Freygar. So what am I going to do with Nico? Do you think, is it okay to pair Nico with something like Indis or Thea for utility? Or you would pair him just with Craig?
Yeah, so it's funny enough you mentioned that, because you can do some funky stuff with him, like you mentioned. I did do a video on it when we tested back in the day Nico with Madeline, and it surprisingly works, because Madeline is one of the only heroes when you look across all of her skills where majority, we'll say 95% of her text states a legion based skill, and because it's a legion based skill, it actually affects every type of troop.
Yeah, exactly. I think her only skill is that all infantry units in her legion gain 5% HP or goes up to 15%. That's the only thing.
Exactly it. So that's why it's very powerful, because you can technically create like a super tanky counterattack damage based archer march with Nico and Madeline. And I've been experimenting, in the past with stuff like Kinnara and Indis, because I have tried Indis now, because I've got to the point where my Indis is fortunately to be 5-3, 5-3, so she's very, very tanky. Yeah. And that infirm trigger actually helps you quite a lot. You'd be surprised at how much that will allow your other 2 archers to actually punch through the enemy, because they're taking 20% extra damage from like just every source. So I could see that as well. Yeah, like if you wanted to try a more utility based, you could definitely do something like that with Indis, Madeline, Fear. I just recommend Craig most of the time because I would say Craig is a very underrated hero and one of probably the best archer heroes when it comes to PvP. Funny enough, because you're gonna gain access to a very busted combo with Nico, especially. Because with Nico and the talent tree, if you went down the marksman talent tree, really deep in, you can see there's a talent called Harvest at the very bottom, like left corner, just before you would go to the final keystone. And it just states anytime you kill an enemy legion or an enemy legion is defeated, you're gaining maximum attack. And because you have an awakened Craig really quickly in the game because of the road to glory in the early game and all the gold chests, you're gonna have this AoE blood damaging effect, which is actually just going to create an attack steroid now for your Nico. So you've got actually like so many different variety of options there with commanders that you could try out and pair with Nico as, you know, another option, you know, as like a third, fourth match.
So, okay, you are kind of convincing me to go for Archer. So what my question is, what is the most optimal way to start with archers when it comes to factions? Because I think you want Gwen win, but I feel like, I mean, I don't have much field experience, but I feel like Spearman from Wilderberg could be the best archer unit.
I don't know, I've still stuck with Spring Wardens. I've personally, throughout my time of playing it over the year, we have tried every single faction. So I've tried everyone and I've had my honest opinions on each faction. And Wilderberg's archers surprisingly are good. The increased all damage dealt is very powerful in PvP. I will admit that it's very powerful. But the problem is, which when you get to it, is you will get this the flying wyvern where you're going to be feeling, okay, I've got this other archer unit now I can field. But you'll realize very, very quickly that the unit is very underwhelming.
Yeah, it's very bad,
Yeah, so like you're kind of losing out. And you can just go to the Spring Wardens, or even if you really wanted to do League of Order, you could. But I just think Spring Wardens is the best choice because even at the very beginning, you have to think if you're trying to be an archer specialist, at the very start of the game, if you pick Spring Wardens, you get Guan Win and the Road to Glory starts with Craig. So you already get access to the two epic archer heroes that you want. So then you can do all the scouting you want, obviously, and the campaign story, which will expertise Guan Win really, really quickly. And all the events you've been doing, guess what? You'll be dumping those heads into Craig, and you're going to have two very, very quickly expertised archer heroes ready for, you know, to go with your gold key commander Nico and your lucky wheels with your Syndron or Freyga, Kinnara in the future, shall we say, you know. So definitely, I don't know. I'm an archer player myself, so I can definitely sell archers a lot more than any other of the
I see. I guess a side note, if someone from our viewers still want to use Wilderberg archers, because Wilderberg also provides 3% legion attack, physical attack. So basically what you can do is you can just start with Spring Wardens and then for free you can switch to Wilderberg. So this way you will be using Spearman, but since your starting faction is Spring Wardens, you will still get a lot of Gwenwyn sculptures, I mean tokens. So this is something that you can definitely do. For first season we have Nico and we have Kinnara, of course. Hosk, you can only get it from VIP, so you cannot technically invest legendary tokens to him. So between Nico and Kinnara, how should we invest? Like, should we just try to awaken Kinnara before anything else, or should we get Nico, invest some sculptures to Nico, get him to first skill to 5, and then start working on Kinnara? How should we do the token investment?
The way I did it, or the way I would do it now in the future, is pretty simple. I would, obviously, as a spender, you're going to get to like VIP 8 really quickly. So I would use the daily chest from that VIP 8 on Nico just to kind of help that Nico along, because you're going to most likely going to find a 5-1-1 Nico pretty quickly, in my whole opinion. So that's just going to let you, you know, stem the bleeding basically on that Nico for the early game. But I would just invest everything into your Kinnara. Your Kinnara is going to be the one hero that when you awaken her, you're going to see there's a massive game changer. It's like it's a complete difference on builds as well, because like having her awaken and having that more consistent defense break option, it allows you to actually use other war pets like the Snow Peak Rock, because it requires so many chances of a defense break, and now you're giving it the chances, so you can actually now create the most optimal builds because you have her awakened. And I just think her in general, when you just look at all of her abilities, they're basically everything you kind of want in an Archer Commander for PvP. So I just think even in the next coming seasons, you've got this investment that's just going to last you for a very, very long time, until you can imagine, you know, a commander might be doing 1400 damage, you know, a 30% target damage dealt reduction and something else. You know what I mean? When they're getting insanely powerful, then I think Kinnara is going to fall out of favor.
Yeah, I feel like Kinnara is like in Rise of Kingdoms stores, she's like Saladin, because it's been, I don't know how many years it's been, but people are still in Season of Conquest in Rise of Kingdoms. People are still running Saladin on the field, and he's working perfectly fine. And I think Kinnara is just going to be the same. Like, she is such a good long-term investment.
Absolute perfect. That's kind of how I look at it. It's weird. The archers, I kind of relate, because I was a cavalry player in Rise of Kingdoms. A lot of the time when I look at archer commanders, I kind of do the same. I relate to them as cavalry heroes. So I was like,
yeah, exactly.
Well, Kinnara's the Saladin of archers. And then I was like, and if you look at Syndrone's basically like the Khan of them. He's just about front load damage.
Yeah, insane amount of damage. Glass cannon.
So put Saladin and Khan together, you've got the combo.
Exactly, yeah. Good old Rise of Kingdoms days. If, let's say, the marches that I'm going to use are Hosk and Kinnara, of course, later down on the road, Sindrian and Freygar. Let's cover that as well if you have the time. And Nico with, I don't know, let's say Craig. What artifacts should I save for, should I hunt for?
If it was me, I would definitely 100% go for Gold Crest. You have to have that artifact for the Syndron Freygar match. It's just insane. It's just like in its league of its own. Let's just say that, because people at first didn't appreciate the root effect, and then they've seen it in open field, and the root plus the amount of single target damage this thing deals out is obscene. So it's definitely one of the must picks at the moment, as well as it depends on your Kinnara build, but you could go for anything between, you know, the Rattle Spear for even more defense break. But if you really didn't want to spend so many gems in these, like, say, like Forge of Light events, because they are really gem heavy investments to get like your artifacts, you could just try and just run Shadow Blades. Honestly, Shadow Blades, I'm not gonna lie, is just one of the staples. It does just an insane amount of AoE damage.
Yeah,
you can't go wrong with that in open field PvP. You can't go wrong with it even in the raid. It just does insane amounts of damage. So I would definitely recommend one of those out of most of them. You know, maybe for the Nico march, you know, because we're taking a different approach, you could run obviously a more offensive artifact still. I'm not gonna deny that, but personally, I would try and see if the Heart of Kamasi would be worth it for your other two marches, because it is a steroid that your two marches care about. It's a lot of normal attack damage and just damage in general that they will benefit from. So it'll be interesting to see maybe that being used for once in the meta.
What about like, of course, we cannot immediately, unless you're a Veil, we cannot immediately start getting all those legendary artifacts. But I assume, like, for example, Bomb Flinger is a really good epic artifact. Yes. And what else? Like, which artifacts should we go for?
So in the early game, to be honest, you would most likely be using Bomb Flinger for majority cases, apart from obviously PvP. Because Bomb Flinger is, like you say, and I've said it in all my guides, it's the all-star archer artifact. Like, it gives you a ton amount of attack, and it's amazing because it's a PV artifact, so it doesn't have a rage cost. So you've only got a 1 minute 30 timer, and you can instantly use it off cooldown. You don't have to build up the rage again. So you're doing so much damage factor in raids, and then when you're going into, you know, your dragon trial pushing and even events, like I said, any event, you can just use this effect against any PvE content, which is very, very powerful.
And I guess the pet you should focus is Snow Peak Rock for archers, right?
So with the new edition, I would have suggested not even the Snow Peak Rock, but with the brand new edition of the
Night Rock.
Yeah, the new Night Rock is definitely, I would say, the #1 favorite for any archer, because no matter what archer you're running, you're always going to get this effect, and every archer is kind of happy about this effect anyway.
Yeah.
And you can make some really powerful, you know, war pet skill combos, which I've gone over on the channel. So you can definitely go for this pet. You might be, you know, tempted to get the Snow Peak Rock. The Snow Peak Rock, I would only suggest for players that are gonna have an awakened Kinnara or like a Nico, because it does rely on a lot more defense breaks than you need, and the more defense breaks you can get, the damage factor is actually insane. Like it's one of the highest damage factoring skills that you'd be surprised that you're gonna have on a war pet. So it's only, I think, a very specialist war pet, if that makes sense. But there's better choices. I'm not gonna lie, there's better choices. Two of the choices that I would honestly suggest is, funny enough, either the infection of a sand lizard, like the venomous in the sand lizard. Those two lizards are amazing for archer players. They do everything you kind of want an archer for an archer march. So the venomous lizard allows you to basically have a additional counter attack damage base effect. So you know you're going to get targeted a lot. So why not just kind of like
boost your counter attack?
Yeah, exactly. So infection just says, you know, 12% chance to inflict poison on an attacker when your legion is hit by a normal attack. Well, everyone's going to be hitting you. You're an archer player. So you can promote that counterattack damage even further with a very counterattack damage heavy build on a venomous lizard, which is really good. And you can do the exact same build or tweak it a little bit with the sand lizard, because the sand lizard is a tanky pet that's just going to allow your other archers, including the archer match you've used, to heal, right? So you're giving your now like murder ball 3 or 4 archer matches you're running out there sustain. And like it's a really powerful pet where I've been personally running 2 sand lizards and then 2 other pets, because with 2 sand lizards, that's enough AoE heal for my other marchers that I get a lot more sustain and stamina usage because of that in the open field. So you can definitely go for one of these 2 lizards or the Night Rock, definitely for like opening war pet options for your archer matches.
A newbie question here. So Night Rock is going to be available for later seasons, or from the get-go people can hunt for it?
From what I understand, it should be available from the get-go.
Oh,
but
I see.
If not, it will be a season 2 pet.
Okay, so I'm in an old account actually, so I have the option to just search for the Night Rock. So I'm just going to log into an account that I just created. Oh no, I don't have the Night Rock on this one, which I created like a week ago.
Okay, so what I would suggest then, pretty simply, in season 1, I would focus on the sand lizard and the venomous lizard primarily for your archers. You're gonna get the most out of it, and then maybe when you get towards the back end of season 1, or say you've got an awakened Kinnara and your Nico is almost awakened as well, or some in that regard, then you might go for the Snow Peak Rock, because you technically have the capabilities to facilitate its requirement, right?
I see.
That skill.
This question is about research, because in Rise of Kingdoms, we don't have, like, if we have peace in the kingdom, we are not going to be fighting until the first KVK, but in Call of Dragons, it's a little bit different. And my question is, in Rise of Kingdoms, what we do is basically, we first focus on economic tech to get all those, you know, research speed ups, building speed ups and all that. Then we move on to military tech. But since in Call of Dragons it's a little bit different, should we still follow the same rule, or should we go like a little bit of economic, a little bit of military, what we should do for our research?
Yeah, so I kind of, from the rock background, I kind of kept that same philosophy where you want to go down that ecotech tree to a point where it makes sense. So you will get to points when you're playing where you're gonna, in the early game, go through the tech tree in the eco, and then it'll just say you just physically can't move on because you need to upgrade your city hall or you need to do other tech. So during that time, you might just set your military tech to go, but with the alliance helps, knowing that generally alliance helps should complete the infantry like ones and pretty much your tier 2 research most of the time.
Yeah.
So you're gonna get through very easily by doing that. But you are gonna focus on that eco tree because the main goal is to try and get that scholarship to max out, 10 out of 10, because that's 15% research reduction with then your scholarship 1, which is basically 10%, so that's 25% in total.
Insane.
Which you can get, right? And the only way you can ever increase your research speed any further is, I believe, from just upgrading the building itself, right? So you're going to get to a point where you're going to have a level 24 building with 18% and those with 25%. So you already have such a high amount that you're just going to start military tech very, very quickly. So you'll realize you'll get to a point, like I say, you'll do eco tree, you'll hit a wall, and then you'll just do your military tree, and then you'll just unlock the wall again, and then you'll just carry on with the eco tree, and then you'll go back down to the military tree, and it just kind of like works on its own, basically. It's a very easy system, I think, once you get into the grasp of things.
So one last question, and it's not related to anything that we discussed so far. And that is, have you had the chance to look at new infantry heroes?
Yeah, I love them.
Yeah, they are quite tanky and they deal, I guess, ton of counterattack damage. So in infantry, we already have like Madeline and Garwood, and now we are going to have them. And some people, even I know, they do like heavy damage dealing infantry march with like Bakar and Nika. Do you think with the release of new infantry Wilderberg commanders or heroes, can someone just focus on infantry specifically, like pure infantry? Do you think it's viable now?
I actually think it might be, and I'm going to test it out, hopefully, in this next season. I want to see how many infantry matches I can figure out that you can run and get the best out of it, because I do believe you might be able to, because you almost have the exact same amount of heroes as the cavalry and the archers now, and they can basically do that. And because of that reasoning, I think you could. And especially when you look at the other heroes and you are a spender, you can definitely time your investments to unlock the heroes, because like Goresh, for example, and your Skogil will be available on like the Wheel of Destiny event. So you've got to think, if you're gonna unlock them, well, just go for it on the Wheel of Destiny, because you're gonna get it 100% guaranteed. You're not gonna get loads of sculptures like you would do in the strongest,
but at least you will be able to guarantee the unlock.
Yeah, exactly. And you can start cooking, because when you look at Goresh as well, it's funny enough, we were talking about Saladin, but when you look at Goresh, Goresh is actually the Saladin of the game, where you get the full power of this hero in a 5-5-5-1, because his awakening, in my eyes, just isn't worth a free-to-play, low-spend, medium spend. It's for the whales, right? Because they need to max out the fourth skill for the garrison rallying effect, right?
Yeah, I think 5-5-5-1 version is just perfect, because the fourth skill, as you said, is just for rallying garrisons, and the expertise, I mean, the awaken is not even that much. Like, it's pretty weak.
No, it's literally like Saladin's skill. It's funny how much alike it is to Saladin's like slight increase to it.
Yeah, so I guess you just get him to 5-5-5-1 and you are good to go.
Yeah, so I like that, and the fact that Skogil is a lot easier to access. She's going to be, again, you Wheel of Destiny and then Lucky Spin afterwards. You can definitely tailor yourself to get these heroes in Season 2, especially in the Season 2 Plus, should we say now, for everyone that they're going to be experiencing. So I'm going to see how good they are in the open field, but it could be definitely a viable option for players to go a full infantry route as well.
Yeah, exactly. Sneaky, thank you so much for joining in, and everyone, Mr. Sneaky is my go-to guy when it comes to Call of Dragons and in-depth guides and everything. His channel link will be top in the description, so make sure to drop him a subscribe. Go ahead and look at his videos because they always packed with a lot of valuable information, so make sure to check them out. Thank you guys so much for watching again, Mr. Sneaky. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll see you guys on the next video. Goodbye.